Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do.
In this episode, I interview Scott Leigh, co-founder and CEO of AltFee, who has created a business with his father and brother to help lawyers price their services in a post-billable hour world. Hey there, welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin. I'll be your host, and I'm very excited today to have as our guest Scott Leigh of AltFee, who's going to talk with us a little bit about what he's doing, what he's been up to, and how he's done it. Scott, pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to chat.
Yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, and then we'll go deep into it.
Yeah, sounds good. So right now, I'm part of the co-founding team, and I'm the CEO here at AltFee. And AltFee is a tool for the legal industry, software tool that's helping law firms be successful and confident when it comes to the scoping and pricing and proposing of their alternative fees. So really helping law firms be successful with operating under a non-hourly model.
Cool. And you're a co-founder with your brother, right?
Brother and dad are both co-founders as well.
That's awesome. So it's a family endeavor.
Yeah, it's a family endeavor. Started that way. We have high ambitions for growth in terms of where we want to go, but we've started from a place of building from pain points that we felt, and that came from us operating at a law firm ourselves. That's where sort of the AltFee origin story comes from.
Yeah, and for people that are watching or listening that don't know, actually both Scott and I live in North Vancouver, and we've actually known each other for a while and talked. But one thing is that sometimes I take my dog for a walk, and when I go on a long walk, I go from here, which is this area called Delbrook, over to Edgemont. And when I walk down Edgemont with my dog, I see this office, and it has in big letters on it, Digby Lee, sorry. And it didn't occur to me until later on that that's your dad's office, right?
Yeah, that's my dad's office. He's still there. He's still working, and that's where the origin story of AltFee really begins. Is within that office. You walk by with your dog every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how it's a bit of a small world, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about that origin story in that office. So you were working there as an associate with your dad and brother?
Yeah, I was practicing law, primarily corporate commercial. For me, it was only corporate commercial, sort of half M&A, half supporting small, medium-sized businesses in various capacities. And the firm was doing real estate planning work as well. And I've been doing that for kind of 6 or so years coming out of law school. And what really happened for us was the pandemic was hitting. And like many others, that was impacting us and those around us in significant ways. And so when the pandemic hit in March 2020 in more of a meaningful way, we were doing approximately 50% of our work in some type of alternative fee. So some way we were getting outside of doing the traditional hourly model to provide an alternative fee to our clients for various types of work. And so we had a lot of experience doing it, but we had never committed to really building designated systems to make sure we were being successful under it. And so what happened when the pandemic was hitting, obviously entering these very uncertain times, and my dad sat back, and it'd been something he'd personally been thinking about for a while, is I want to move to be able to provide an alternative fee option for every type of work that we take on. It was really a goal of his. And he thought, what better time than now when our clients are entering these times of incredible uncertainty. And so if we can help provide some level of certainty around their costs and what they're getting out of the work they get from us, felt like that was a significant step forward. And so we really started from that place of this is something that made sense for where the world was at and where we were at as a business. And so we spent the next 4 or 5 months really just building a very manual system. But putting ourselves in a position where we could dig into this space of pricing in a meaningful way and make sure that, our team of 25 or 30 of us at the time were going to be set up to be successful, both short term, but also long term. And so it really gave us this fresh perspective on how you could go about adjusting your model at a firm and be successful in that way.
So like a lot of things, the pandemic was a bit of a inciting incident. It was like it was something that jump started this interest in flat fees, or had the firm been doing that previously?
We've been doing quite a bit of flat fees ourselves, but it really did push us to want to provide more of that optionality for our clients on every type of work we were doing. So not just, the real estate transactions that we were doing, but some of those more complex, some of the more unpredictable work as well. What can we do to build systems that are going to enable us to be confident that we can scope and price out those types of work as well? So pandemic was influential in us making that decision, and it was uh, also very influential in us deciding that taking this manual system that was working really well and was getting launched in the firm, this idea might actually be able to be taken from here and turned into a piece of technology that could support that. Obviously, that became AltFee, but us going through that experience, being in the industry, what we saw was a tremendous amount of technology adoption in that first bit of the pandemic. And a lot of that was forced, right? That was forced upon us because we had to do things that we didn't have to do before. But we sort of sat back and said, just period, across the board, is this technology adoption going to be a trend, or is this something that's going to stick around because people are going to realize the efficiencies and what you can do here when you add technology into the mix? And so that gave us a little boost of confidence when we started thinking about maybe building our own piece of technology in the, in the niche that we were in, but within the industry that we saw adopting technology much more broadly.
So your father's office, it sounds like it's mostly transactional, or does he also do litigation?
He doesn't do any litigation, or I should say very little litigation. Yeah, he comes from a bankruptcy and insolvency background prior to starting his own firms. But in terms of the work they do, it's corporate, commercial, real estate, estate planning. Yeah, more on the transactional side.
Okay. And then another question is, we talked about flat fees, but there's also other ways of pricing beyond just the hourly rate besides flat fees, like value pricing, for example, where you look at the kind of value you're delivering to the client and then price it accordingly. Does your system work for that too, or is it more on the flat fee end?
Yeah, 100% it does. So a couple things. I think you're right. There's, flat fee is our most obvious, most common example of what we would describe as an alternative fee. And for us, an alternative fee, or what you often hear as alternative fee arrangements, AFAs, for us, that's really about anything outside of the hourly model that can provide cost certainty for the client. And so we have flat fees, we have stage or phase-based pricing, we have success fees, periodic fees, subscription, unbundling, all these things that kind of fit under that umbrella. And value-based pricing is in and around those as a method to price your work that's not hourly. And so one of the things that we did within our app, which is unique, and one of the more exciting pieces with everything that's happening in our industry, as I'm sure we'll get into over this conversation, is we call it modifiers, but it's really an opportunity to be systematic in more of those value-based pricing considerations you're taking. So what we did was we actually ran a survey last year. Part of that survey, we asked firms about their value-based pricing methods and what they do. We heard, somewhere in the mid 84%, I think it was, said we consider value when we price. But, in the hundreds of conversations I was having over that, first year and a half of AltFee, when you peel back the onion a little bit, you really don't see a lot of systematic and consistent approach to that. It's very gut reaction. It's very, before I put a number in front of a client, I'm going to give it my spidey sense reaction. And so we said, why not create something that's consistent, systematic for everyone within your organization on those considerations which you deem are really important, that aren't focused on how long it's going to take. So not only the classic idea of scoping out, the complexity of the work because it's going to involve all these pieces of work you need to do, but also what are those less time focused things that we may look at that might affect what the right price is to charge. And what we call modifiers is really a systematic way to approach that for our customers.
And I definitely want to dig into that in just a moment. But first off, I want to go back to like who the solution might work for. And I'm sure you get this objection all the time. where you talk to a lawyer and they go, well, my practice is different. Like it's so individual that I don't know that I could really use your product. What do you say to them? Like let's say they do have a mix of litigation, or let's say they have something that's transactional, but maybe it's a very specialized area of tax. So it's unique in how much time they spend on things. What's your response to them about whether or not they can make use of your solution?
Yeah, I think, we're believers that any type of work you're doing can be done under an alternative fee if you're committed and want to do it. That's what I believe. But I definitely see the spectrum on the predictability side of things, from super predictable to less predictable, and how the farther you get towards less predictable, the more challenging it becomes to get your mind in a direction of determining that you can come to some sort of arrangement that makes sense. Now, practically speaking, what I would say to those people is, no matter where you are in terms of the work that you're doing on that spectrum, encouraging upfront conversation to figure out what is going to be part of the job you're taking on is integral for offering an alternative fee. And for those that have less predictability, the method to do that is to break your work down into individual stages or individual phases, and then be in a position to scope and price out, provide the certainty that you can at each of the individual stages. That might mean on day one, you can't tell that person it's going to be X amount to get all the way to trial if you're doing some sort of litigation. But I can say, we're going to go through stage one of a planning phase. I'm going to be able to fix fee that for you. Maybe even the second phase of this, I know what we're going to get ourselves into. I can fix fee that for you, and keep working your way towards offering a fixed fee. And for me, and put myself in client shoes, if my legal advisors could come to me and simply just say that I'll never send you an invoice, and that with that invoice being a surprise, that's a huge win. That is a huge step forward that many of us have felt on the lawyer side of it, on the attorney side of it. Many of us have felt on the client side of it when that invoice shows up, and you're both kind of hoping that with the value that you're seeing and the value that's being delivered from each side of it is equaling out at the end of the day. If you can shift that conversation to the front end in any way, I think that's meaningful steps forward for anyone offering any types of services.
Well, I totally agree that when there's more of a meeting of the minds about the value that you're presenting and the value that clients are receiving, there's also a greater likelihood you're going to get paid for it.
100%. Yeah. Expect collection rates to be very, very good when you're agreed upon fees up front.
Okay, so going back to AltFee so that people that haven't heard about it can understand like what it does. At least one part is that it helps you to figure out how to price things according to a flat fee or some alternative fee arrangement, right? It helps you with that.
Yeah. Yeah. The first step is around accurately scoping out the piece of work and then pricing it. Yeah.
Okay. And then what comes after that? Like how else does your platform help?
So the system really works in a way where what you're able to do as a firm is break your work down into those individual project types, or for the more complex work, into individual stages. And each of those has what we call a guideline. Essentially, what that guideline is helping you do, again, these are obviously fully customizable for your firm and your market and all that. We provide a bunch of templates to help people get started, but that's really a place where all of your firm's centralized knowledge around that piece of work lives, your data tied to that piece of work lives, and then you use that so that you can accomplish the first step of an alternative fee project, which is scoping that thing really well. So you have this list of factors that may or may not be relevant for this particular client's project you're working on, but you're in a position, whoever you are within that firm, whatever your role is, to have this checklist of sorts in front of you to go through and make sure you're having that really good upfront conversation to figure out what's in scope, what's not in scope, and therefore be able to price accordingly. And so if I'll simplify it for the purposes of anyone listening right now, really what we're doing is we're saying, using a template, use that template to scope the project really well, use those modifiers. So consider the value, not just the tasks that are going to be completed, consider the value of what you're delivering as well. And then package that scope and value up in a way that you can communicate to the client, and then be in a position where you have a tool that's there for you to soak in all of the learnings that you're naturally going to have with all of your experiences, so you can get better each time you take on a piece of work.
So now let's talk about those modifiers, because I guess when you scope it out, it leads you to, let's say, a flat fee. And that flat fee is going to be whatever it is from project to project. But it sounds to me like what you're saying is the modifiers are a way of taking in some like individual feedback on this particular case that might modify the flat fee. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I kind of view the modifiers in two buckets. So one bucket I would call like the value-based pricing bucket, right? So that's a terminology that's, fairly well known within the industry now, but that is more of those client-facing things. How much value is the client getting out of this, and how may that affect the price? We also have internal considerations, right? Things like the capacity of our team. How much do we enjoy this type of work? Like these other considerations that are things that we look at internally that may affect what we decide is the right price for that. Ultimately, when you price your work this way, there's some level of collaboration because we have to agree upon a structure before we start doing the work. And so you're looking at both sides of those in a systematic way using these modifiers that allow you to affect the price on a percentage basis up and sometimes down, right? This also includes discounts. What we heard a lot was, you go ask most law firms what their billing realization and collection rates are, and we look at Clio's legal trends report for some averages on that. The data is slightly alarming and different than what people expected. It often says along the lines of 75 cents to the dollar is what is actual cash in jeans based on your recorded amount. So you're not collecting what you're recording, that is for sure. And so when you think about those things, you need to bring that system together in a way that allows you to consider those other pieces of it. And one of the things we saw happening was discounts, right? People are often offering discounts, but not really in a thoughtful way. They're doing it for whatever the reason they felt in their gut or the spidey sense was delivering. And so what we've seen, which is really interesting, is the use of the modifiers to just be systematic and determine your reason for why you're offering the discount. It's potential future work coming from them. It's a good referral of work for us, whatever the reason is. But make sure you're making that decision in a really intelligent way versus just sort of a gut reaction way.
Yeah, it also helps you to track the reasons so that over time you can see what's coming up more often.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. So alt fee, it helps you to scope, helps you to determine a flat fee, but these modifiers also give you this, flexibility that you can work into your pricing so that it's not just this completely static thing that you're stuck with. And then on top of it, it sounds like you have essentially like a project management system that helps you to execute the work and then collaborate. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say a little bit less so on the project management side of it, but certainly on the collaboration side of it. So sort of the next piece of that workflow is packaging up how you want to describe that scope, describe that value in a way that you can take from AltFee and go, get this into your proposal email or your engagement letter in a way that's consistent with how you've talked about it, right? So the same dollar amount, same description that you've been talking to your client about, you can take that from AltFee and put that into your proposal or however you're sharing that. But on the collaboration side, for sure, I mean, one of the exciting things that we didn't anticipate as much when we first launched was how when you centralize the knowledge of your firm into this one place, it's been really exciting to see who the different team members are that can more actively take on roles in scoping and pricing. It doesn't have to be the senior partner who has all the knowledge in their head about how to carry out this work because they've taken the relevant portions of that, pulled it into a system. So the associate, the paralegal, the intake specialist, whoever it is, actually has the confidence and ability to go accurately scope and price a piece of work because they have a centralized system. And so what it encourages is some really good collaboration and effective allocating of resources to have the right people taking on the right portions of that process.
Oh, that's cool. So like the various people that are actually responsible for those different aspects of the work, they get to have their say about like, but how long that takes and all that.
Yeah, exactly. It's effective to pull the right team members in to be part of the scoping and pricing process of that matter, depending on where the role is, from first conversation to getting that into the engagement letter or however you're handling that piece. Yeah, you can tap into that.
One question that comes to mind when you put this together is that, especially at the beginning, like you're transitioning from doing this internally at your family law firm to, and as you said, it was a manual process at that point, and you have to make it into a system, a platform that would be scalable through a software service type of offering. How do you get, like when you're putting together the scoping for other firms to do different types of work, how do you get the data? Like, because obviously you would, to me, I would think that you would be, using market data about what other firms are charging for similar types of services or things like that. Was that a challenge?
Yeah, that was a challenge. So just so I'm clear, we provide templates for 400 and I think we're around 470 different project types. Those templates are templates with project types and relevant factors that are potentially part of the scope of that type of work. The dollar amounts that are included in those templates are not us saying this is the appropriate amount to charge. They're just placeholder amounts, which are intended to be updated for that firm based on their strategy, their market, what they're trying to accomplish. So to answer your question about the research side of it, it has and is an ongoing, endless, as you can imagine, opportunity and job to research different project types, update relevant factors, and also keep an eye on any available market data around average prices. But it's one of the interesting things about where AltFee fits is that we're in a position to learn a lot about the space of pricing based on individual projects versus a lot of the data that's out there, as you know, is often just hourly rates for different geographic regions or different seniority levels. And so we're learning a lot about what pricing of actual individual projects for flat fees are versus just what hourly rates are going into those types of work.
I bet you are. I mean, I would love to see, AltFee's trends report come out in the future about exactly what kind of pricing that is, because you're going to have that granular information about all the different firms that are participating and working with your company. Um, so one of the things that I want to point out to everyone is that, AltFee won at the startup alley at Legal Tech this year, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So you guys won at Tech Show this year, and I have to say that there was a crowd of AI startups there. And to be honest, I was a bit surprised at the showing because there was like 15 startups that were vying with each other for the top spot. I would say that like probably 14 out of 15 were AI startups, and AltFee won. And you guys don't have, I mean, I'm sure that it's probably in the works or coming, but it's not an AI focus, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So like, and with everything being a buzz with AI and all that, it it says that lawyers are really, really interested in alternative fees and how they're going to work that into what they do. And they see a ton of value there. And so the question I'm getting to is what is your sense of lawyers' interest in this? I mean, it must be really high. And what have they been telling you about why they're looking into this?
Yeah, so I think going into Tech Show, but also just more generally, we've obviously been we're in the market. We're having so many conversations with customers, prospective customers, and what we've seen over the last call it 8 months or so is quite a meaningful shift in conversation. And we launched our product in 2022 commercially, and we're early to the market, and some of those conversations of getting people to think about their work in this way at times were quite challenging, to be frank. And so what we've really felt over the last year and a half, and even more so over the last 8 months, is we're huge supporters of AI because for us, what it means, both in terms of internal opportunities, but more broadly within the market, what it means is that law firms are adopting technology today that are increasing the efficiency of their billable work. Things that used to take 4 hours can now take an hour. Whatever the numbers are, it doesn't matter. But the point is that firms are actually starting to adopt these real pieces of technology that create efficiencies, not in administrative work only, but actually in the billable work we carry on. And so what we've seen, we've been trying to connect the dots for a while, but what we've seen from our customers and prospective customers as we've spoken to them now is that they're connecting the dots between I may be adopting a piece of technology or dramatically improving a system in whatever way I am that's reducing the time it takes to do X, Y, Z. When I do that, my billable hours are going down. That is typically not a good thing for revenue or for profits. And therefore, I kind of got to figure out the other piece of this puzzle if I'm going to do this thing. And so we've seen this natural connection between efficiency gaining firms. How am I going to price my work to make sure I'm rewarded for those efficiency gains that I'm creating? And that's obviously a nice spot for AltFee to fit in. And that's honestly really when we were preparing for Tech Show, the line of attack that we wanted to create as part of our pitch. We wanted to make sure that piece was felt because we knew that we were 13 or 14 other AI first tools that we're going to be pitching, and we knew AI was going to be the buzz. And we saw where our angle was to fit within that in a meaningful way. And that's kind of what I would describe as what I'm feeling now. I've over the last 3 weeks, even another shift forward. And I've had some conversations with 3 or 4, maybe 3 prospective customers, one other legal tech vendor. And the conversations have been super exciting for me, just from someone in the industry, someone that made a jump from practicing into building technology in this space. These individuals are talking about building legal businesses, not a law practice. And what I mean by that is they're coming at this from an efficiency first perspective, a pricing first perspective, in something that I want to be able to build. Like for me, you got to deliver an outcome, right? When you're providing legal services, table stakes, the outcome has to be there. You got to be doing a solid job of that. How you get there, there's a lot of room for innovation. And these firms are coming at it from the perspective of how am I going to go in the most effective and efficient way as possible, get from first conversation to delivering that outcome that I know I want to deliver to my customer, and then start to scale that thing. And so it's been really cool the last 3 weeks, some of the conversations I've been having. I described it as the modern law firm on a post that I did, because I think it's really that combination of things that is where the industry is shifting towards. Those individuals are ahead of the average, but that general consensus is certainly being felt from us with a lot of the conversations we get to have.
Yeah, I think there definitely is a turn towards, to use different words to describe it, is that formerly things that have been like access to justice type ventures are turning now towards more like, you could call it consumer tech, you could call it justice tech, or direct to consumer, legal businesses. But it's all about taking those efficiencies, the systematic approach, the data from like how you can actually make these things work in a more systematic fashion, and launching that as a business. And there's so much to be had there. I mean, you have like some early companies like Do Not Pay that have done really well within the consumer segment. And naturally, there's a ton of space and many other verticals to attack within legal. So yeah, it seems only natural.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, one of the challenges with the hourly model is that it just doesn't incentivize innovation, right? Within the firm. It really doesn't. And so I think that's one of the challenges with that model. And we're obviously building a tool that's really helped people be successful away from the hourly model. But I do understand why the model has existed for so long and is so prevalent in the industry. There's a lot of things that are easy about it. Doesn't mean, in my opinion, that they're good, but there's some things that are easy about it. But it does really restrict firms' ability to innovate and get excited and motivated to go and do things differently. So it's nice to see some of the conversation shifting in a meaningful way, and not only conversation, but actually seeing it actioned on by firms in a meaningful way is exciting as well.
And I get it, like in terms of Tech Show too, because in a way, the fact that there were so many AI companies, it kind of like they drowned each other out. And the value that you guys were offering, it goes hand in hand with the efficiency, movement. So
yeah,
and actually it puts it in perspective so that lawyers know how to approach this from a business standpoint. And I think
no, I think that's, a big piece of it is that AI was a thing, right? This thing that was happening. Everyone was like trying to learn as much as they could about it when it was first being publicly talked about a lot. Something you've had your brain wrapped around for a while, but not everyone. And once it started to come to market a little bit in more of a real way. There was starting to be some like early products coming out. People are sitting there going, oh, this is pretty cool. Like I could see how this could impact me. But the next phase of that thinking, and we saw early signs of it from bigger organizations, the big firms that have teams that think about these things, not the smaller firms, right, that are less resourced. We saw early signs of them figuring out, oh, I might go adopt this piece of technology. This is obviously going to impact my revenue if we keep the same model. We got to start figuring out the other side of it. And we've seen that now carry forward, from not just the bigger firms, but down into the solos.
So with that, I'd like to hear from you a little bit about any success stories or significant milestones at AltFee. Is it?
Yeah. Well, probably there's been a lot of really great stuff that we've been able to be a part of in our, few years of being out there, to be honest. I think a couple maybe that stand out was obviously the tech show, a very recent one. I think that was really cool for us just from, the validation of where the market is at in their thinking on it, right? As a company that started from a perspective of being niche and really building awareness a lot in the early days. Really cool to see some of that more broadly accepted and excitement around the area. We're a finalist in Clio's annual awards in the fall as well, which was really fun to be a part of and be down part of ClioCon at Nashville last year. That was a blast. Yeah, so I mean, there's been lots of really great things that we've been able to do in a short amount of time, but really feel like we're so early in our journey that we have so much to look forward to ahead of us as well.
I want to look back just for a second on and I know I'm taking us back to the beginning, but when you were having those initial conversations at the law firm about even adopting flat fees, even thinking through like whether or not this was a good idea to offer them, how you were going to do it, how you were going to systematize it. I mean, you don't have to name names, although your dad's in charge of the firm, but did you have some initial pushback? Like what were some of the things that maybe you've seen reflected in other lawyers that you've talked to about this, that were those speed bumps, that were the challenges, that were the things that you needed to talk through to get there?
Yeah, so when we started this thing, pre-AltFee, just at the firm, when we started that, we looked at it from what we viewed as the three major stakeholders in a legal services transaction. So we looked at the law firm, we looked at legal professionals, and we looked at the clients. And we looked at this model, and we looked at if this model was done really well, how that would impact each of those three stakeholders. And when we saw the model done well, we saw how incredible the difference was between the average hourly project versus the average flat fee project in terms of the impact on all of those stakeholders. And we looked at the industry more broadly, right? My dad's been in the industry for 40 something years, practicing law here in BC. And he's seen a lot of ups and downs and different things over those years. But one of the things that was really impacting him, as well as us around us, my generation of relatively new people in the industry, was this burnout, this we're literally seeing good legal minds leaving the industry because of just what existed within the workplace. And when we looked deeper than that, we felt like a lot of that came from an hourly model, that if you got away from that, the different motivations and incentives could move you in a direction of a workplace and a culture that was much more collaborative, much more in tune with, I think, how people want to work nowadays. And so we looked at all those different angles. That's what got us really excited about this movement, both for us as a firm before AltFee was an idea, and then moving AltFee forward, was truly that impact it could have on all those stakeholders involved within that experience. I say that to bring it back to some of the challenges. There was challenges internally, right, at the firm. Anyone that's practiced law, virtually anyone that's practiced law at least, has been brought up under the hourly model, and it's really what you know. And so you're changing behavior for some people in some dynamic in those early days. And what I've seen both internally at Digby Lee and Company, but also with some of the conversations I've been able to have with whoever that have had those alternative fee, flat fee experiences, for many, it just takes one. It takes one of those experiences that's different than what you know, where it truly impacts you, where you realize this is how I need to do things. And it's really cool to hear people that have had those experiences, and some can pinpoint the exact moment, the exact project, whatever it was that made the shift. But honestly, a lot of it, and it's, for all of us that have practiced or been part of legal teams, one of the true frustrations that for me as a practicing attorney was always this idea that when under the hourly model, as soon as you start, you're not really on the same team, because you're not aligned in incentives. And I know you are on the same team, and we're doing the same, and we're going the same place, but really the law firm, the legal team is actually financially rewarded to some degree for inefficiency, because we're trying to get hours in, right? That's how we're compensated. That's how we are going to invoice. Yet the client's sitting there wanting to get to an outcome. And what I saw for many of these individuals we got to speak to was this shift they got to see was really cool, where they said, hey, here's the flat fee. Could be a really small thing, whatever it is, here's a small project, $1,000, whatever it is, who cares? And once you agree upon that fee and you say, hey, here's the scope of the thing, you are literally on a team. You guys have an outcome in mind. You're trying to get there as efficiently, as effectively as possible. Everyone wants to deliver on that outcome, however they can get there as quickly as they can, because that makes everyone happier. And that is a significant shift compared to the hourly model. And so, although there's some pushback from some people that have especially been around the industry for a while and a sort of ingrained behavior, it's also really cool to see the flip side of that for others that have had that experience.
That's a really great point, is that it brings you literally onto the same team, because it changes not only your interest, but the mindset of how you're working together.
Yeah, I mean, the hourly model, it's when your hourly model is also doubled up with a compensation model that rewards the recording of hours or the billing of hours, you're really incentivized to hoard work to some degree, to make sure you hit targets that you're aiming for. And so it doesn't really, when you step back and look at it from high level business perspective, and you're thinking about how do we most effectively allocate our resources to get this project done as best as possible, and like many other businesses, try to find the lower cost resources to do that, to do whatever portion of the work makes sense. It's not really how law firms have fully worked, because of the structure that's in place around certain targets and things like that. But when you shift it, it's really interesting to see that more, that team dynamic, that collaborative behavior start to really set in.
There's so much debate and talk about the death of the billable hour, and usually it's in the context of AI, now that that's everywhere. But I think that when people ask the question, what's the alternative to the billable hour? AltFee, right? Literally.
I like it. I like it. I like it. Yeah, I support that.
So where do you see AltFee going in the next few years?
Yeah, we got so much exciting stuff we want to do. And we continually want to have a really positive impact on those firms that are offering their alternative fees. We just want to be a central piece of their puzzle that enable them to be really successful under this model, so they continue to double down and keep transitioning more of their work to that direction, and yeah, just provide that environment that they can work within, that creates fulfillment for them, right? Fulfillment in whatever that means for them, financially, culturally, whatever that is, coming back to those three main stakeholders that we look at, and having a really positive impact on all of them.
And so looking back at, like the structural changes that are happening right now with AI, and how that's making people more efficient, and how the law firms that are being made more efficient are going to have to change their business model. Do you think it's going to last? Do you think the billable hour is going to stick around? Do you have any predictions for how long it's going to last?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly going to be around for a while. It's just it's a slow moving beast in terms of just so much of the history and the systems that many firms are built on are tied to it in one way or another, and so it's going to involve some slow shifting. But quite honestly, all it takes, I think, from many organizations is having the one department, even the one project type that fits really well under the model, to start to see the opportunity. And we've seen this on varying scales, from really small firms to really big firms. And it's not every firm that is going to say, hey, we 100% do hourly today, and we're doing 100% flat fee tomorrow. We see this incremental growth from where they're at now to where they want to get to. And that can start with one project type. That can start with one department within the firm, or one member of the team that is really excited about what this can do and enable them to go have success under it and allow that to start spreading. So, it's my perspective is that AI is going to have an incredibly large impact on the billable hour. It's happening right now. It's happening quite quickly. What does that mean in terms of timelines? I don't know. I mean, you can Google the death of the billable hour and you'll find many articles from many months. But for me, the reasoning around what's happening, the true impact of what's happening right now, I've never seen anything that is remotely close to the impact that it's having. And so I think because of that, as you said, to remain competitive, you got to stay on top of this and make sure that those efficiency gains you're creating are aligning with your pricing model at your firm.
Well, I think for any lawyer or law firm out there that's looking to transition their, pricing model in light of everything that's happening, they should definitely check out AltFee. Because how how better to figure that out, but with the assistance of, a company that systematized it themselves.
Exactly. We think about it a lot.
So in the time that we have left, I'd like to understand about, what makes you tick, like what got you interested. Like it's one thing to solve it at your firm, but another thing to make it into a business and like launch it and go out there into the great unknown and see whether or not there's interest in it, and to fight for that. So like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I think I went me personally, I did my commerce degree, and as I was doing that, I really, even though I grew up with my dad practicing law, I never really thought I was going to law school or was going to become a lawyer. It was never the plan, you know what I mean? But what I saw happening near the end of my commerce degree was not really sure what that next piece of the puzzle looked like. And I personally felt like the law degree and that experience was going to be super beneficial for me in whatever sort of business role I may end up having. And so got me comfortable with going to law school. That turned into practicing law at my dad's firm for a number of years, which was just a great experience, learning so much. But for me personally, I kind of always had this little entrepreneurial bug that I couldn't get rid of, that, doing some things off the side of the desk, whatever, having these little mini explorations. And when we had this experience within the firm around building out a system around this, we had a relationship of ours who came from, technology, being a consultant in that space. And he kind of just said one day, have you guys ever thought about building a piece of technology to kind of match up what you're doing here? And we'd kind of loosely tossed it around, but I don't think we were ever at the point of like, hey, let's go do this thing, right? We're non-technical backgrounds, where we've worked within a law firm. We've done lots of facets of operating a business, but not on the technical side. And so I, I'll speak personally, but I think for my brother and my dad as well, we're all entrepreneurial, and we kind of saw this opportunity that was unique, right? It really organically came to us, and it wasn't us desperately trying to find something. It came to us at the right time and the right moment. And we saw this opportunity for something that we genuinely believe then, and definitely believe now, was a big opportunity as well. Something that was really exciting, scalable, bigger than just our small community around us. We saw this problem and this opportunity outside of our community, and honestly outside of our industry as well. And so, yeah, put those things together, gave us a boost of, taking the right steps to talk to a bunch of people, and not jump in without doing some due diligence around it. But once we kind of got some of the answers that we felt we needed, it felt like the right time, the right moment in our lives and in our careers to go take a shot at something different, and go have this experience.
You know, I need to ask you, because you're working with your dad and your brother, both of them named Digby, by the way, which I think is a fan. I love that name. But what is it like? Is it without getting too personal, like, do you guys butt heads? Like, it's just like a completely collaborative type of approach? Like, I think for some people it might be difficult to work with family, but how does it work out?
Yeah, my brother's kid is actually named Digby as well. So there's actually, it's super confusing. Yeah, we get the question fairly often, because I guess, for us it's normal, but from the outside, I guess it's a bit of a unique dynamic. But we grew up playing sports, and dad was coach a lot of the time. And so at times growing up, he wasn't just a dad, he was a coach. And so he sort of had these differing roles in a similar way that actually transitioned to the professional environment as well. Often he was boss, not dad, while in the office. And then Dig and I, my brother, we've had a great relationship growing up. We have different skill sets. Our brains are different, but we work really well together. And we have worked together for a long time as well, from early days at the firm, summer roles, whatever. We've overlapped, all of us in I don't even know, 15 plus years or something like that now, probably. We've been working together in some capacity. And so when this came about, we were all excited about this opportunity, and we all had different skill sets that we brought to the table. And so when you ask the question about butting heads, I think it's kind of, because of that unique dynamic that we have, being family, we know each other very, very well. And so we trust each other a lot more than, going into business with probably most anyone else. And so we don't always have the same opinion. So when we get to sit around and have those conversations, we just get to have honest conversations about it. And there's no contention there. It's just opinions based on our backgrounds, our experience, all with the same goal of making the best decision possible with what's in front of us and carrying on to the next thing, and ultimately trusting in each other that we're going to make that the best decision we can and carry forward. So for me, it's a really fortunate position because, for the hard decisions and those hard times that you will inevitably go through when you're trying to build a business, to sit around and throw those choices around and the decision making with people that you couldn't trust more than anyone else is a huge advantage for us, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, I think you're very lucky to have that, that you're getting to work with family and that you get along and that you're able to collaborate in the way that you are. Especially the dynamic with your brother. It sounds like that's truly like a remarkable situation. And I mean, you should feel very fortunate about that, because not every not all brothers get along like that, but that's fantastic.
Yeah, it has been great. And Dig, he never went to law school. He comes from a marketing background, commerce degree, done a bunch of business development and so many other things at the firm over the years, that we also have these different skill sets that fit really well together and are quite different. So yeah, it's made us as a duo, an effective duo to work together.
That's fantastic. So I ask everybody this, and you've talked a little bit about this, but at the end of the day, like doing all this crazy stuff, you're very busy and all that, but what makes it worthwhile for you?
Yeah, honestly, it's what we said, or what I said earlier. It's really the impact that this can have on an industry that we care about a lot. And so what we've been able to see actually happen with the implementation of an AltFee model within firms is really powerful. And that's sort of what we saw happen at my dad's firm at the start. And we've seen that now scale to other firms as well. And it comes back to those three stakeholders. It comes back to the state of the industry that we felt wasn't in a great place in terms of great people leaving it. And for us, it's really, if we can continue to have a positive impact on those three major stakeholders and then the experiences they're all having as they engage within our industry, then that's a net win for us. And that's fulfilling for us to keep waking up and getting after it.
Well, I think what you're doing, Scott, is amazing. I really love the concept of AltFee and what you're doing with it, because I think what you do is that you answer a question that people don't yet have the real answer to. The question of like, okay, now that we have all this efficiency, how do we do business and price it accordingly? And so I think you're doing a fantastic job, and you're very much needed in the marketplace. So
appreciate that, Tom. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So for everyone who's listening and watching, they want to keep in touch with you. How would they do that?
Yeah, well, you can learn more about AltFee on our website. That's altfeeco.com. You can find me, Scott Leigh, last name spelled Leigh, on LinkedIn, as well as obviously AltFee on there as well. Those are probably the easiest methods to find us. Sign up to our newsletter, follow us on LinkedIn, whatever is easiest for you. And feel free to reach out if you have questions, thoughts, or anything. Don't hesitate to touch base with me.
Well, thanks again, Scott. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Yeah, I appreciate it.
And for everyone who's watching, thank you so much for tuning in to LawDroid Manifesto podcast. See you next time.
Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.